any mother wants to give their son like the best lives, and just, that I was struggling.
A 12-year-old little boy executed while sleeping, and his mom's ex-boyfriend charged with capital murder. The big question, could it have been prevented?
To me, I believe that more could have been done based on his behavior toward the mother.
You're watching Fox 26 Crime Files. This week, we're digging into that tragic case. We'll go through that long criminal rap sheet of the man charged in this young boy's murder and the charging documents that only Fox 26 has access to. But first, our Jonathan Mejia has some exclusive info as well. He's the only reporter who talked to the mom of this 12-year-old, and she tells us what happened in the early morning hours of March 4th.
In the moment of him being there, I'm just trying to put so much pressure on his wound, and I feel like I just couldn't because my hands were just stuck.
Ashley Rostro's 12-year-old son, Carlos Fernandez, was shot and killed on Monday. And while it's been 3 days, for Rostro and her family, this fatal situation just doesn't seem real.
Heartbroken, just still feel so unreal. And I honestly don't even think I've even been hit. It hasn't even hit me yet.
Police have identified a suspect. His name is Terry Brian Rivera. He has a long criminal history and is the father of Rostro's 2 youngest daughters. It's a sad reality Fernandez's sisters will forever live with. Their father allegedly shooting and killing their brother.
The things that they say that their brother is dead, or that their dad killed their brother, and they hate him. They honestly hate their dad. They've told me that.
Now Rostro is living with the memory of her son, Carlos Fernandez.
He was just the best child, literally well-mannered, such a sweetheart at such a young age, true gentleman at 12.
Now we have confirmed that just days before the murder, Rivera assaulted Rostro at that apartment. HCSO says Rostro called them reporting that Rivera came to drop their kids off, became confrontational, and pushed her to the ground. HCSO saying she didn't report any pain or discomfort, but wanted to press charges. The district attorney says they declined to file those charges because Rostro didn't report any pain, discomfort, or injury. One of the things I'm going to talk to activist Quanell X about. He joins me now in studio. Quanell, thank you for being here. I know that you had called a press conference with the family previously and decided to cancel that last minute. Could you start by telling us why that happened? Why'd you cancel that?
The family had reached out to me, the mother in particular, and she was extremely heartbroken. And the family wanted the person who committed this act to be arrested, and I was under the assumption that maybe they did not know who the person was, and that we would be asking the public to help identify this person and bring him up, get him off the streets. But in that conversation, I learned that they knew who the suspect was, and so I felt it was important that we make sure law enforcement know. Then come to find out, law enforcement did know, and when she was on the day of the press conference, she was at the funeral home making plans for Carlos, the young 12-year-old beautiful young man who was taken unjustly. And because she couldn't get away from that and what was happening at the moment, it was all spinning so quick about the possible arrest of this suspect. And so that's why we did not do it. But I will say this suspect who murdered Carlos was a very insecure human being. He was a very jealous human being. He had a long history of physically beating and assaulting the mother because he wanted to control the mother and keep her in a relationship with him. And he had threatened her, but if she saw someone else, what he would do to her, he had threatened to kill her before. The last time he assaulted her, law enforcement was called, and the DA decided not to accept charges because the mother herself did not really push and pursue charges because she's saying she had no injuries.
And I did see this report. I actually have it in my hands here. And yeah, it says that deputies asked if she felt any pain or injuries, and she said no. But she did still want to pursue charges. So are you saying that she ultimately didn't?
It was interpreted to the DA that she did not want to pursue charges in the intake division when the call was made by law enforcement. But I wish that the mother had just done a little bit more. Went down to the DA's office, went to the courthouse, filed a complaint with Internal Affairs Division because this man had threatened to kill her before. And she knew that this man was physically abusive to her in the past.
And
that
that's
he was
what
not
you're
going to
saying.
change.
You're saying that he has been physically abusive to her in the past, but it seems like just from what's on record, that he doesn't have any assault charges against her filed. So she never reported
But he had been
it?
physically abusive in the past, yes.
Okay. And so that information is what you got from her?
Is what I got from the family, yes.
Okay. And could you go a little bit more into that and what you mean by physical abuse and control?
He was very jealous. He was very insecure, and he wanted to control the mother's whereabouts, where she would go, who she would see, what she could not do, and what she could do. Even though she didn't want to be with him anymore, and she had articulated to him very well, crystal clear, he would not accept it. And so he would make terroristic threats to her all the time about what he would do. And so, to me, I believe that more could have been done based on his behavior toward the mother, the threats he had made to the mother, and being physically abusive and threatening to the mother. I believe more could have been done to get this man sooner and put him away before he murdered young Carlos.
And when you say more could have been done, do you mean on the mother's part or on law enforcement's part?
I would say more about all of those who witnessed it. And this was witnessed by multiple people who witnessed him threatening the mother, who witnessed him intimidating and terroristically going after the mother. This went on for a little while. This just didn't happen overnight.
Yeah,
And
they
so
were saying it was an on and off relationship.
This should have been dealt with by those who saw all the warning signs. And they knew that he had a history of abusing women. They were aware of that also. And so those who witnessed it, friends, family, etc., everyone could have did more to help protect young Carlos, because it's those kind of men that you don't want around children who are so possessive of the mother. They'd rather kill what she loves to punish her and hurt her because she no longer wants to be with him.
And I think that really speaks to a broader issue. I mean, it is something that happens time and time again here in Harris County. We see domestic abuse just escalate to homicide. And it seems like there's a failure on so many different parts, but I like that you're pointing out people around the situation. You can also call and report. You can also speak up and say what's happening around you. And from what you gathered, talking to the mother, does it sound like Rivera targeted Carlos because Carlos is not his biological son and the other two children are?
I didn't get that from the mother, but that was conveyed to us by one of the neighbors in the apartment complex who was kind of very familiar with the situation, with the suspect and with the family. And they shared things with my lieutenant about what they had witnessed. And so when I tell you there were others in the family and those who live in the complex who witnessed this man's behavior in the past, who knew he was dangerous, more should have been done to protect those children.
And you say you've been speaking with neighbors. What else have you gathered from them about the situation that Carlos was living in previous to his death?
You know, some of them don't really want to get involved for many different reasons, and because they don't want to become the victims of a crime or retaliation. But this gentleman had a history of coming over there, acting out and acting a fool. That was not his first time. And he had made threats to her about she couldn't see anyone else. She couldn't be with no one else, and threatened what he would do if she did. And it wasn't just heard by the mom. These threats were heard by others also. And it was incumbent upon those who witnessed this to do something to help a battered woman.
And we did get our hands on the charging documents, and it says that the day that Carlos was killed, the suspects called the mom from a blocked number. Do you know anything about that?
No.
No. And what made you want to work with this family? What about this case really stood out to you?
Well, you know, I'm sick and tired of children being killed here in Houston. I'm sick and tired of children being targeted for crime, for acts of criminal. There's criminals who feel free to attack children now in this city. The criminal element does not fear the system when it comes to harming and hurting children like it used to. And I just want to be an activist and a leader in this city that sends a message to the criminal element that we will never tolerate you harming and violating and committing criminal acts against our children, that we will go to war with you by any means necessary to protect our babies. That needs to be the universal cry in this city and other cities when it comes to protecting our children. We used to be like that, but now we've gotten away from that. And our children, we look up now, grown men pulling up to the houses, kidnapping little girls that they're meeting on social media, and families protecting these men that are committing these crimes. When I grew up as a young man in this city, our elders wouldn't protect criminals like that. But now we had no such thing as a no snitch policy when I was coming up as a young man, where we protect rapists, where we protect people who commit crimes against the elderly, where the no snitch policy now allows people to rape and molest and sexually assault children, but the no snitch policy says don't tell, because then that's snitching. No freak, no child molester, no man or woman that commits crimes against the vulnerable citizens of this city should ever have a free policy and pass in our community that says we're not going to snitch on you if we know who you are. That's a practice that must be condemned in our community, that we're not going to tolerate that unless you send the message it's a safe haven to do it in certain communities because they have a no snitch policy. That has to change.
And do you feel like that no snitch policy kind of comes over into domestic violence? I feel like a lot of the time we say that's their problem, that's in their home, it's happening over there, that's none of my business.
I remember as a young man growing up in this city, a lot of men were afraid to even hit a woman in public. Because if you were seen by other men striking a woman in public, every man around you would go to whoop you. The men would come together and beat you behind if they saw you putting your hands on a woman in public. Now we watch men beat women on social media. We watch men stomp women on social media. And instead of the men intervening to protect that woman and stop the abuser, they got phones in their hands recording it. We've gone from stopping men who commit crimes against women and children in public to now being more interested in filming the act for likes. That's how low we've fallen in our society now.
Yeah, and it really speaks back to, like we were saying earlier, if you see something, say something, speak up if you know someone is being abused. I
want to make sure that a message is sent by the new Harris County DA that when you do something like this, we'll lock you up and throw away the key. You don't deserve to be among the free anymore.
Well, thank you for that information. Is there anything else that you think our viewers should know about this case, about Carlos, about Rivera?
I would just like our viewers to know and to understand that what's happening in one community also affects all of us. We cannot sit in certain communities and believe that's happening over there, that's happening to them. Because as the criminal crime element goes unchecked, it's like a bad bacterial germ, it spreads everywhere. We all should be concerned about the entire safety of this city. And wherever crimes take place, we as Houstonians should treat it as a priority to let the criminal element know we're sticking together to protect one another, protect our women and children, protect our elderly, and that in Houston, if you commit a crime, we will all work to get you off the streets. I think that's important for us to develop that type of message in this city.
Moving on to those capital murder documents. Those documents say that Rivera called Rostro after the killing from a block number and admitted to being at the scene. They also say that he stole a Glock handgun from her back in December of 2022. Now, this is the Webster police report in that incident. They took the gun from Rivera and gave it back to Rostro, according to the documents. Documents also say that little Carlos sustained 4 gunshot wounds. As for Rivera's criminal history, in 2014, he was charged with assault on a family member for strangling a woman. It was pled to a lesser charge, and he was sentenced to 8 months in jail. In December of 2015, he was charged with discharging a firearm in a metro area for shooting out of his car window. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 8 days in jail. In May of 2018, he was charged with aggravated assault for assaulting a man with a gun. but that case was dismissed by the request of the victim. And then in December of 2022, he was charged with unlawful carrying a weapon, the charge we just mentioned earlier, but that was also dropped. Then in May of 2023, he was charged with terroristic threat for threatening to hurt someone with his car. He was sentenced to 6 days in jail on that on January 10th of this year. And we're going to continue to follow this case and find out everything that we can and continue to bring you exclusive content on Fox 26. That's it for this week on the Fox 26 Crime Files. I'm your host, Abigail Dye. I'll see you next week.